Today we're taking a close look at the Commencal Meta HT AM. This is probably the most requested bike for me to review, and a review is coming soon. Make sure you're subscribed so that you're notified when that drops. This is my buddy's bike. Thank you, Kenny, for letting me borrow this, and Izzy. He and I built this up a couple months ago down here in the basement, and ever since then I've been dying to get my hands on it to give it a ride. And I know you guys are curious what these ride like too, because they're cheap and they have great geometry. Geometry's free. You don't need to pay more money to have good geometry on a bike. So I'm excited to see bikes like this exist with aggressive geometry for cheap. The question is, how does it ride? We will see. But the purpose of today's video is to take a closer look at this. Obviously, this is a used bike. It's been in use for a while, and I actually like that. It helps us kind of see what's been going on over the course of time. So we're gonna take a look at this, share some geo numbers, share some of my thoughts about it. Just these are the things that don't usually make it into the review, because the review is more about how it rides. This is more about value, spec, and all that. Now, we built this up from a frame, so none of the parts on this are part of the build. So really the spec is more about the frame, so that's what we're gonna look at today. This is an aluminum aggressive hardtail, and it's got a 65-degree head angle, 428mm chainstays, which is not bad. If it's plus tires, we're running 2.5s in the rear and a 2.8 up front. Awesome choice. It'll also fit 29ers on here. 428mm chainstay's pretty normal. That's a pretty average chainstay length for one of these bikes, so it should be a good all-rounder. The 65-degree head angle is a big plus for me. I like that because remember, as hardtails sag in their travel, the head angle gets steeper and steeper and steeper. So at bottom out, this will be 72.5 degrees head angle. That's pretty dang steep. 65 is slack, but usually when you're riding, it's closer to 67 in the sag and where that's all happening. This is a size medium. It's got a 420 reach. That's pretty small by today's standards, but when it came out, that was pretty aggressive. So one thing that's interesting is the rear center, the chainstay, is longer than the reach, and that gives it an interesting feel when the front half is shorter than the back half. That's more a sizing thing for me. If I were on a large, it would have a longer front than back, and I really like that setup for my personal bikes. But yeah, that's just another reason why I think chainstays should change based on frame size, because that proportion of the front center and the rear center gets wonky when you're on the super small frames or the super large frames. So it's an aluminum frame, killer paint job. I love the decals. I think it's just a sharp bike. The welds look great, build quality looks great, paint quality looks great. My friend Izzy's been riding this quite a bit, and they tape it up so that it doesn't get all scratched up, and it's wearing really well. So let's take a look at the bottom bracket area. We've got a nice, mostly straight seat tube, which I love. That means you can run long droppers in it and get this slammed. That is a little bit higher than I like to see, but you have to keep in mind this has a really low standover height. When you put a water bottle in there and it takes up most of the front triangle, you realize it's real easy to stand over this bike and get off in the middle of tech sections and flat foot without contacting the top tube. I don't know that we need that much seat tube, but that's just me because I like seats as low as humanly possible, and I like everything to feel like a dirt jumper. In the bottom bracket area, we've got a couple little gussets in here. This is all tape that has Sedona dust all over it, so pardon that. Couple little chips in there, but nothing out of the ordinary for a hardtail in Sedona. This is a 2.5. We got plenty of clearance in there. And we're running some of my favorite rims, the Ibis 738. These wheels have a 35mm internal width, which is perfect for 2.6 to 2.8 wheels. And it's a nice soft wheel that doesn't beat you up. This should be a joy to ride and a good combination on this. So there's no chainstay bridge in here, which I like. That usually stiffens up an aluminum frame more than it needs to be. And same thing up here. There's no seat stay bridge right here, stiffening that up, which I like. That usually means the back end can flex a little bit more. Pretty cool design how the seat stays come up and join with this top tube seat tube junction. I like that a lot. You can also see that the seat stays are a little bit thinner than some aluminum bikes. That should provide for a little bit of flex, but we'll see. We don't have adjustable dropouts, so this chainstay length is the length you get. You can't shorten it, can't lengthen it. You can't run single speed without an eccentric bottom bracket. If you don't know what an eccentric bottom bracket is, don't worry, I'll explain that in another video one day. We have a threaded bottom bracket, which I love. One thing when we were building it up, the grommets and the plugs for the frame are a little bit tight and a little bit wonky. They just, some of them sit good, but some of them, I don't love how they sit. We have an internally routed dropper, and I like that it doesn't come out way up here. That means you could still run a frame bag up here. We got a water bottle mount on top, nothing on bottom. Kind of an ovalized, squared off tube in here. It's not round, and I like that. It's got a good look to it. It also doesn't look overly stiff up front like my Banshee, but we will see. These are all just initial impressions. We're running a 2.5 Minion DHF in the rear with cush core inside, which is really nice on hardtails. It helps keep rim damage down, but most importantly, it helps us fine tune the suspension of the rear tire, and I can run lower pressure without it getting squirmy and without worrying about pinch flats. Cush core in the back on a bike like this makes a lot of sense. What else? We've got an 11-speed XT drivetrain on this. We have XT brakes front and rear, XT 170mm cranks. We've got a Fox transfer dropper, a nice short Renthal stem, and an Easton Haven 35mm carbon bar. XT 11-speed shifter with an MRP ribbon up front. Most hardtails these days are coming with the old IS standard mount there for the brakes, so you have to run an adapter for the post mount. We're running a 160 rotor in the back and a 180 rotor up front. Nice tidy little build, Kenny, good job. A couple more things I love about this bike. We have a substantial chain guard protection here, really like that. And I love the price. The price is amazing, and these bikes look sharp. So Geo, price, build, construction. The main question is, how does it ride with the Geo, and is this a stiff aluminum frame, a medium aluminum frame, or a compliant aluminum frame? Often the luxury of choosing a comfortable frame that's not too stiff brings the price up quite a bit, because those are harder to engineer, harder to manufacture, and more expensive. So because Commencal is a direct-to-consumer brand, it's cheaper because you're not paying a shop the upcharge that they charge to carry a frame. You're cutting out the middleman, but it also means you don't have a shop to put it together for you. It also means you can't go test ride them because Commencals aren't in any shops. So reviews like this are even more important. I'm gonna take this out for a couple weeks, get to know it, ride it on a whole bunch of trails, then film a review. Stay tuned for that. If you love hardtails as much as I do, check out my other videos over here. I do a lot of hardtail reviews, and I've ridden quite a few and I'm able to compare them a lot. And if you're wanting custom bike advice, head over to my Patreon where I can give custom recommendations based on where people live. Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.